All right, welcome back to the Strange Cheshire Hum event. I'm Siobhan O'Connor, and with me are Vladimir, James, and Emily. Today, we're diving into one of the oddest acoustic mysteries to ever ripple through the UK, specifically the hum that haunted Cheshire in the 1970s. Now, if you grew up anywhere near Hale Barns or Altrincham back then, you probably remember it. People described it as this low, persistent drone, like, and I quote, a huge diesel engine idling in the sky. Not exactly the kind of thing you can just ignore, right?
Yeah, my uncle actually lived in Cheshire during that time, and he used to say it kept him up at night. He thought it was some sort of industrial generator. But the odd thing was, no matter where you went, the sound seemed to follow you. It wasn't just in one spot, and, the local council got all sorts of complaints. People were convinced it was coming from the new motorway, or maybe the water treatment plant. But every time they checked, nothing matched up. No machinery, no obvious culprit.
That's what really gets me. As an outsider, I always assumed these things had a straightforward explanation, like faulty power lines or something. But the more you dig, the weirder it gets. Residents would say the hum was worse at night, and some even claimed it made their windows vibrate. There were even reports of people moving house just to get away from it. That's pretty extreme.
In Soviet Union, we had similar stories, but usually it was blamed on factories or military bases. But here, the authorities could not find any technical source. It is interesting because usually, with enough investigation, you find a leaky pipe or a transformer. But in Cheshire, nothing. It is almost as if the sound was, everywhere and nowhere at once.
Exactly, Vladimir. And I think that's what made it so unsettling for people. It wasn't just a nuisance. It was a mystery that nobody could pin down. And, as an acoustic engineer, I always want to believe there's a logical explanation. But with the Cheshire hum, the usual suspects just didn't add up.
So, while all this humming was going on, there were also these really strange reports about the sky. People in Hale Barns started noticing these cloud formations, described as undulations in a corrugated roof. That's such a vivid image. It wasn't just one or two people either. There were multiple accounts of these rippling, almost mechanical-looking clouds appearing at the same time as the hum.
That actually reminds me of an old Irish tale. Bear with me for a second. Where villagers would see rippled skies before something unusual happened, like a fairy procession or a strange sound. I know, it sounds a bit out there, but sometimes folklore picks up on real phenomena before science catches up. I always wonder if these stories are just poetic ways of describing things like atmospheric waves or temperature inversions. Maybe there's a link between what people saw in Cheshire and some kind of rare weather event?
That's a good point, Siobhan. At the time, meteorologists did look into it. There were theories about temperature inversions trapping sound, or unusual air currents creating both the hum and the odd cloud shapes. But, as far as I know, nothing conclusive ever came out of those investigations. It was almost as if the weather was just as much of a red herring as the local infrastructure.
In Russia, we sometimes see similar cloud patterns when there are strong atmospheric disturbances, especially near large transmitters or military installations. But I must say, the connection between clouds and sound is not always direct. Sometimes people see patterns because they are searching for answers. But I do not dismiss folklore. Sometimes it contains a grain of truth, hidden in the story.
Right, and I think that's what makes this so fascinating. You have science, folklore, and eyewitness accounts all swirling together. And yet, no one could really say for sure what was going on. It just adds another layer to the mystery.
Now, this is where things get really interesting. Around the same time as the Cheshire hum, there were rumours about strange signals coming from the east, specifically the so-called Russian woodpecker. Vladimir, you probably know this better than any of us. The Duga transmitter, right?
Yes, the Duga radar. It was a massive over-the-horizon radar system built by the Soviet Union as early warning for missile attacks. The signal was very powerful, 10 megawatts, if I remember correctly. It created a repetitive tapping noise on shortwave radios, which is why people called it the woodpecker. From 1976 to 1989, you could hear it all over the world. It even interfered with aviation and television. But the Soviets denied everything, of course. Even on our maps, the site was listed as a children's camp. Very secretive.
And that's where the theories start to overlap, right? Some people in Cheshire thought the hum and the weird clouds might be connected to the Duga transmitter. I mean, the timing lines up, and the Duga was powerful enough to mess with electronics thousands of miles away. But as far as I can tell, there's no hard evidence linking the two. It's more of a, what do you call it, James? A tantalizing coincidence.
Yeah, that's about right. British intelligence was definitely interested in the Duga signals. They were tracking them, trying to figure out what the Soviets were up to. But as for a direct link to the Cheshire hum, it's mostly speculation. Still, the idea that Cold War technology could have these strange side effects on both the airwaves and maybe even the atmosphere is not completely out of the question. But, like you said, Emily, there's just not enough evidence to say for sure.
And I suppose that's what keeps the story alive, isn't it? The mix of science, secrecy, and a bit of local legend. Even now, we don't have all the answers. Maybe we never will. But it's the questions that keep us coming back.
Absolutely. And who knows? Maybe someone listening has a piece of the puzzle we haven't heard yet. That's what makes these mysteries so compelling.
Yes, and perhaps one day more documents will be released, and we will know the full story. Until then, we can only speculate and enjoy the mystery.
Well, that's all for this episode of the Strange Cheshire Hum event. Thanks for joining us as we try to untangle the mysteries in the sky. Siobhan, Vladimir, Emily, always a pleasure.
Thanks, James. And thank you to everyone listening. We'll be back soon with more strange tales and maybe a few answers. Slan.
Goodbye, everyone. Until next time.
Take care, all. Can't wait for the next one.